Everyone. If you've ever found yourself fighting with loading spinners or tangled up in complex client-side state, you know that data fetching can be a real headache. Well, today, we're going to dive into how the Next.js app router completely flips the script with a performance-first strategy that's going to change how you think about getting data to your users.
This right here, this is the entire philosophy. Everything we're going to talk about today really just boils down to this one simple idea. If you can get this into your head, fetch less, fetch earlier, cache more, and stay off the client unless you absolutely have to, you're already halfway to building insanely fast applications.
Okay, that's a great mantra, right? But how do we actually do it? Let's break it down into the practical steps, the stuff you can start using in your own projects, like today.
All right, first things first. We have to talk about the biggest shift in thinking. With the Next.js app router, fetching data on the server isn't just an option anymore. It's the new default. Everything starts on the server.
Yep, you heard that right. Your React components can literally be async and await data directly inside them. Now that might sound simple, but this is incredibly powerful. It shifts a massive amount of complexity away from your user's browser and puts it back on the server where it belongs.
And the benefits? They're immediate. Because the data is already there before the page even gets sent, you just wipe out a whole category of problems. You eliminate those pesky client-side request waterfalls, which means way faster initial loads, and that means no more loading spinners for your main content. Plus, search engines get nice, fully rendered HTML so your SEO improves. And on top of all that, Next.js just gives you automatic caching and request deduplication for free. It just handles some of the biggest performance headaches for you. Okay, so we've established server fetching is our new home base. Now, let's look at the cool tools Next.js gives us to really build on it. We're going to start with how it completely supercharges the native Fetch API to give us some incredible control over caching.
And this is where things get really cool. Next.js takes the standard Fetch API you already know and just gives it superpowers. I mean, look how simple this is. By default, every single fetch request is aggressively cached. That's force cache, and it's perfect for stuff that doesn't change much, like CMS content. Need fresh, user-specific data? Fine, just add the no store option. And for that perfect middle round, Revalidate lets you serve a cached version instantly while it fetches a fresh copy in the background. Having this much control with just a single option is, honestly, a total game changer.
Now, before we get into parallelism, we have to understand the enemy, the request waterfall. This thing is a classic performance killer. It's that frustrating chain reaction where your app has to wait for one request to finish before it can even start the next one. It leads to this slow, cascading load that just makes users want to close the tab.
And here's how you fix it. On the left, you've got the slow, sequential way, one await, then the next await. On the right, you have the fast way. You fire off all your requests at the same time with Promise All. By asking for everything you need right at the beginning, you slash your total wait time. And you want to know the best part? If you have multiple components that all happen to need the exact same data, Next.js is smart enough to see that, and it only makes one single network request. It just automatically dedupes it for you. It's kind of magical.
Okay, so we're fetching in parallel on the server, which is great. But what if one of those requests is just way slower than all the others? You don't want your entire page to be held up waiting for the one slow part, right? Well, that's exactly where Suspense comes in. You know, Suspense is a total game changer for user experience. It lets you send the important parts of your page, like the main layout, the header, the navbar, to the user instantly. Then, as your slower data finally comes in, the finished components are just streamed in to fill in the blanks. The user sees something meaningful right away, which makes the whole site feel incredibly fast and responsive, even if some background data is still loading. All right, let's take a step back for a second. We've been really focused on the server, but a truly fast app thinks about caching in multiple layers. You can think of it as your complete performance stack.
A really solid strategy has these 3 layers. First up is the CDN, caching your static stuff, and even whole pages right at the edge, super close to your users. The second layer is your server, using those powerful fetch caching options we just talked about. And finally, you've got the client's browser, which you use strategically for data that changes a lot based on what the user is doing. Each layer acts like a shield, protecting the layer behind it from unnecessary requests.
So I know we've been saying avoid the client, but that doesn't mean you should never use the client. There are definitely some specific, limited situations where fetching data client-side is still the right tool for the job. The rule of thumb is this:
Client-side fetching is for data that's highly dynamic and driven by the user's immediate actions. Think about a search bar that shows results as you type, or live chat messages popping up, or real-time notifications. For these kinds of interactive features, using libraries like SWR or React Query is still a great choice. But remember, this is the exception, not the rule. For that initial page load, you fetch it on the server.
All right, before we wrap up, let's go through a quick checkup on some common pitfalls. These are the kinds of mistakes that can easily undo all the hard work and performance benefits we've been talking about. Let's look at these anti-patterns. You see this all the time. Fetching some data on the server and then needlessly fetching the exact same data again on the client. Another common one is fetching a huge, heavy data object when you only really needed 1 or 2 fields from it. Or maybe you're creating unnecessary request waterfalls on the client because you're not consolidating your fetches. By just thinking server first and being mindful to only fetch what you need, you can easily avoid these performance traps.
And remember, you can't improve what you don't measure. Use the tools you probably already have, like the Network tab in Chrome DevTools or Lighthouse, to actually audit your app. Go look for those waterfalls, check your cache headers, make sure your data payloads are nice and lean. This is how you prove to yourself that your strategy is actually working.
So let's bring it all together. We've covered a lot of ground, but it all comes back to that core philosophy we started with. It's all about adopting this new modern fetching mindset.
So here it is in a nutshell. Start by fetching on the server. That's your new default. From there, leverage the powerful built-in caching options to dial in your data's freshness. Use Suspense to create an instant, non-blocking experience for your users. Think about caching in layers: CDN, server, and client. And finally, always measure your results. This strategy is really the key to getting world-class performance in a modern Next.js app.
And that brings us to our final question, really a question for you. Take a fresh look at your own projects through this lens. Is your app fetching as efficiently as it could be? My guess is there are probably some powerful, simple performance wins just waiting for you to find them. Thanks so much for joining me.